Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Tuesday episode this week with Elly Griffith-Ward. Hey Elly, welcome back.
Hello, how you doing?
All good here. Thank you for asking. And of course, thank you for coming back and sharing all the insights that you have on teams that go bad. And we'll talk about all of that in a second. But before that, what was the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master, Elly?
The book that has the longest tail, so to speak, in terms of its impact on my mind is Nonviolent Communication by Michael Rosenberger. Absolutely love it. And, you know, it's not just about my life as an agile coach, as a Scrum Master. It's about my whole life. I think it's significantly improved vast swathes of my communications with everyone I meet. So I think about it pretty much every day. I try to apply the concepts every day. I can't say I manage it, but I try.
It's not a simple, it's a very simple model, but it's not simple to implement. I remember when I read the book a few years back and I felt just like you described it, that it was something that would change my life. And it did. It does, however, make me even more frustrated of why other people don't understand that's a better way to communicate. So I do struggle with that. And obviously, as everybody, I'm not always able to apply that. But have you found some tips, some approaches, something that works for you to like keep you centered on using that method that nonviolent communication describes?
Well, you know, I have a really interesting anecdote about that happened quite recently that focuses around a technique that I'm trying to use, but I don't always use, right? So I'm trying to become more self-aware of my own mental state, and I'm following the hand-brain model by Dan Siegel, which I find really interesting. So the concept of the flipped lid moment in your body. So I don't know if you're familiar with it. The hand-brain model talks about the brain as being you can imagine a hand with your fingers wrapped around your thumb in the middle. That is a brain at rest in a calm state. You're able to access all of your logical functions because your logical functions are your fingers, and they are connected to the blood supply of the rest of the brain. Your thumb is your amygdala, and your sort of, like, people used to call it the lower brain. It's not that's been disproved as a theory, but you can still think of it like that because it's essentially your fight or flight response. It's your more reptilian kind of functions. So when your brain is happy and calm, it is all wrapped over all together. When you freak out, you go into what he calls a flipped lid state, and you imagine lifting your fingers up and away from your thumb. And in this state, the blood flow to your logical and reasoning parts of your brain is decreased, and you actually aren't capable of doing that logical reasoning in the same way as you normally would. And your blood flow goes to your legs, to your heart, your body, enabling you to run away or fight if that's where you're at. Now, obviously, that's not a great state to be in a company, but I think we go into that state more often than we think. So what I'm working on in myself is trying to work out, like, what are the physical signs that I'm heading towards that state, so that I can then try to bring myself back, like mindfully bring myself back, because I'm not able to use, for example, nonviolent communication when I'm in that state. So I had this really interesting thing that happened to me recently where I had a project, right? And I was getting feedback from two different people. Those two different people gave me feedback within half an hour of each other. They gave exactly the same feedback. They are both people I respect immensely, I really like, and I've worked with them for years. The first piece of feedback was given using MVC, absolutely textbook. I don't think he realized he was doing it, but it was brilliant, you know. So he gives like he was in a very positive tone of voice. He was talking about the stimulus, how he separated that from his feelings, clarified his needs, and then he was like looking for a very specific change. He assumed positive intent at all times. I was excited at the end of that conversation. I was hopeful about helping him change his life, making things better for him, you know, and I was full of ideas. after the second piece of feedback, it contained things like moralistic judgments, comparisons, hyperbole, like always and never. And I felt myself going into that flip lid state. And I couldn't stop myself, unfortunately, in this point. So I was fighting back every point, and I left that conversation, despite him giving me exactly the same feedback. I left it thinking, oh, how much he didn't have a good point to make, and he was really stupid. And I felt angry and humiliated. And that wasn't so bizarre that the turn of phrase for exactly the same thing could have completely different results and a much lower likelihood that I'm actually going to do the thing that's been suggested. So for me, it's fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great anecdote that explains why it's so key to learn how to communicate and also, of course, to learn how to assess ourselves, which is, I think, one of the main points there in that story.
Yeah.
Because if we know how to assess our state of mind, then we can react based on that, right? Like, am I feeling flight or fight movement coming? Then let's say, hey, could we continue tomorrow? I really have to run. Would you excuse me? Right? Like, because when you're going into that state, there's no point in trying to avoid it, because that's who you are. That's something triggered it and it's too late. So it's better to stop it right there and, take it on later when things have cooled down and you have had time to think.
Exactly. So I started at the start of that conversation, I was trying to use MVC. I was trying to use some like Chris Voss's techniques and stuff like that as well. He's really cool for persuading people. But as the conversation went on, I became less and less able to do that. And then I was just like, okay, let's just close this conversation because I'm not going to get anywhere. It's not going to be successful.
And those conversations are really disappointing when you get out of them.
They are.
But Elly, it's not just us who have difficult moments, the teams also do. And today's Tuesday, so we're going to explore one of those. So share with us a story of a team, give us a little bit about the context, but above all, walk us through the story of how that small behavior or pattern developed over time and ultimately led to big problems.
So I'm thinking of a team in this point, although it could, again, apply to several teams in this sort of anti-pattern where there's a really high whip, right? So there's high pressure coming from outside the team. The team are motivated and keen to fulfill all the goals, but they're feeling a bit downtrodden, how it goes. The product manager is getting, or product owner is getting, squashed and pressure from the outside because they can see that their team is not achieving the things that it's been told to start, because the cycle time is getting longer because the whip is getting higher, right? Those things are connected.
And those always go together. That's one thing. It's like you can't fight it.
No. But so many people don't realize that they are
just work harder. Just work harder.
Yeah, I know, right? So there's this huge pressure coming from outside the team. The experience inside the team is really unhappy. People are unhappy with each other. No one can understand why someone else hasn't finished their task yet, right? Because they're working in silos. They're all trying to remember loads of stuff at once. Stand-ups take forever because there's loads of things on the board that they need to go through and remember. Things get forgotten, So the thing with this is that it's a downward spiral, because more stuff comes in, the team get more overloaded, cycle time goes up and up and up, and nothing comes out the other side, right? So this team is actually a really lovely success story, and I know this is supposed to be about how things go wrong, but do you mind if I talk about how it went right? Because
and especially what helped the team, that's the key thing, because we can see that the increasing whip and pressure is kind of feeding on each other and creating a big problem, and how they got out of there, is important. So walk us through that.
So I had just started learning about value stream mapping at this point, and I thought, I'll apply this to this team. Let's see what happens. I've been reading the goal, like everyone does, and I got really excited about Herbie and all those things, right? So what I did was I created a value stream map. I put all of the but all of the tickets, right, all at once. So the whole thing was a mega multi-stream value stream map. I listed every single ticket, and I listed what day it was worked on and what day it wasn't worked on. So I started to measure wait time, and it was a very, very simple basis of wait time. Like, did anything happen to that ticket at all on a particular day? If yes, it goes into it was worked on. If nothing at all happened to it, then it goes into the wait time. And I did this on a piece of A3 paper. And over the course of a week, or maybe two, I ended up with this comically long piece of paper, which I kept adding more A3 pages to. I ended up having to come out every night and look at their board and see if anything had been touched, and going through their, their Jira posts and stuff, and laying it out across all of their desks. It was all taped together, and it was about 10 feet long, very quickly, and the writing was quite small. Right. So they've got like 26 things in flight or something at any one time, and things weren't getting worked on. So this was a great visual that suddenly started to click into place with people. We did a few other things as well. So I started off with scaffolding what I was going to say, with talking about the 7 wastes of lean and getting them to understand, where waste comes from, and then talking about WIP and how that works. I took them to visit a team. Like, we basically went on a little away day, went to visit a team that was working in XP, and they felt the vibe in that team, how happy and relaxed and calm they all were. And that was quite different, and some people, I got them to read the goal and the Phoenix project and stuff like that. So we all scaffolded all this sort of stuff together, and then ended up seizing the moment on a particular day when everyone had they'd got enough information in their brains, and they just had enough of the current situation. And instead of doing a stand-up one day, we just started rubbing off the whiteboard, which was our Jira board, our Kanban board. We rubbed it all off, and we started again, and we were like, okay, how simple can we make it? None of these columns, get it all off. None of this work, get it all off. We're just going to have to do doing done. And we put it up, and we were like, oh, we've still got 26 things in flight. What can we do with that? And they had this amazing idea. The team had it, and I'm still amazed to this day. They turned the whole whiteboard around, completely blank slate, and they said, we're going to pick the most important ticket, we're going to stick it in the middle, and we're going to do a big brainstorm of it. So we've got to remember, definition of ready, definition of done. We're going to get all of that onto this board so we don't forget anything, and we're only going to work on this ticket all at once, all together. And the tester, oh my goodness, I've never seen her so happy. She could suddenly get into the ticket earlier on in the process. She could genuinely left shift. And she was saying to the guys, like, no, we need to do this thing here, not at this point in the process. I need to come in all the way back here. And they were like, do you? Really? She was like, I've been saying this for ages, but, they'd been too busy, too weighed down to hear it. So then they created this amazing circular board. I've never seen a circular board before. They never needed to look at their Kanban board because it was hidden, but stakeholders could come in. It changed things for the product owner as well, because he could have that negotiation with his stakeholders about what the priority order was. And the stakeholders felt calmer because the cycle time became a lot more predictable. They could,
and they were getting stuff immediately.
Yes, yeah. And they could have control over that priority order. So if they needed something immediately, they could get it bumped up to the top through a negotiation with the product owner. So actually, it ended up that both the product owner and the tester have gone away and given talks about this circular board that they've invented. They're so proud of it.
Are those somewhere? We should put the link on the show notes.
Possibly. I genuinely don't know. I think they might have been internal. I think they might have gone to an Agile Manchester. I'll have a look for it.
Yeah, because I'm sure that a lot of our listeners would be interested in understanding a little bit more what you mean by the circular board.
Yeah. Well, it's really cool. It has definition of ready, so they have to cover all of those things off. And then it has a section for the user story, so it makes sure that they have the section for the acceptance criteria. And then it has all of the engineering requirements, any other compulsory requirements that you have to include or think about, elements of unit testing, whatever it was that they were doing in order to get the monitoring in place. All of that stuff is listed, so that as they go around this sort of spider diagram, essentially it is, they fill it all out visually together,
and so for one ticket,
and they do it
important.
all together. Yes. So it's just the one ticket. They do everything together. It's a visual representation of that picture of that can be linked, or the link to it can be linked onto the Jira ticket, right? Everything's in there, but it's a collaborative effort. And, you know, the PO can be a part of that conversation as well, the engineering manager.
And it's what the team needs. So it's really cool,
That's
because that's what they needed in order to get out of this too many things at the same time going on.
Exactly. So in this case, they then went fully XP. They mobbed on everything. And you know, the body language changed. Like, they were relaxed. There was a lot more laughter. They would go to lunch together. The stakeholders were more relaxed. I mean, they weren't completely happy because they still weren't getting everything they wanted, but they could see
but they
why.
never do.
Exactly.
And it's not possible because it's so easy to come up with ideas, and it takes days, maybe even weeks, to implement many of those ideas.
Yeah. And so once you're predictable, really, that's most of the battle won.
Absolutely.
For a stakeholder, I think.
Great story. Thank you for sharing that, Elly.
Pleasure.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, but tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.